Well, good morning, everybody. We're going to sing, lift every voice and sing, and it's number 49 in your hymnal book. Yep, I get you. Taught us, sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us, facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the
Welcome. I just have two announcements that I like to get over with so I don't forget them. Next week is the Partnership Church celebration and service, and there will be a Hungarian lunch following the second service. And today at 12:15, those of you who are interested in the ad hoc committee coming together during challenging times, we're going to meet at the piano at 12:15. So, good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane. We're glad to have you with us. UUCS is an open-hearted congregation which appreciates your unique background, beliefs, or lifestyle. If you're one of our longtime members or have been here a short time, or if you're joining us for the very first time, we're delighted to have you with us. We also appreciate those of you streaming or Zooming our services. It is our mission to join together to create a nourishing, liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in the wider world. Or in short, to create community, find meaning, and live justly. Welcome to everyone. I am your lay leader, Lisa Conger, and with me this morning is our guest speaker, Dr. Margo Hill. Dr. Hill is a Spokane Tribal member, former Tribal Court Judge, and Professor of Urban Planning and American Indian Law at Eastern. She will speak about her advocacy on behalf of murdered, missing Indigenous women. I will introduce her more completely right before her presentation. So please take a moment now to greet one another and connect. Be sure to say hello to someone you haven't met yet. Thank you. We'll have more time to greet one another and share coffee and tea after the service. We now turn from our informal greeting of one another to formally begin our service by lighting our chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism, the symbol of our unity and solidarity, of our openness and inclusion, of our community and individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need, and may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost. Our opening words are sobering. Sarah Stops Pretty Places was 18 years old when she was found dead in the backyard of a Hardin, Montana home. She was a member of the Crow, Northern Cheyenne tribal communities, and her family wants answers and justice after local law enforcement couldn't determine the cause of her death. Stops Pretty Places' story is one of many. There are over 2,300 missing Native American women and girls in the United States, according to the Sovereign Bodies Institute. Native American women and girls also face some of the highest levels of murder, domestic abuse, and sexual violence in America. But as the Pacific Northwest Inlander wrote, the members and leaders of the missing and murdered Indigenous women movement didn't need this data to tell something was happening and that it was being overlooked by law enforcement. For years, the women-led movement has demanded justice for their loved ones in the US and Canada, where there's a lack of comprehensive data on how many have gone missing. They called attention to the stories of their sisters, mothers, and grandmothers, which they often felt had gone unheard. They pointed to the fact that more than half of Native American women face sexual or intimate partner violence during their lifetime, and that in some areas, Native American women are murdered at rates more than 10 times the national average, according to the Justice Department.
Okay, if you can turn to 97, we're going to sing Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child. And it's in your hymnal book, not up here today. Number 97.
Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. A long way from home. A long way from home. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. A long way from home. A long way from home. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. A long way from home. A long way from
Each time we gather as a congregation, there are always those who are with us in our minds and hearts and who we want to wrap in our love and care. We kindle light this morning for all those suffering in the war between Russia and the Ukraine, for all those suffering in the volatile Middle Eastern conflicts, for the homeless or unsheltered, the missing and the murdered, for those government workers facing unprecedented uncertainty. Let us share a moment in silence, embracing others who are here in our hearts this morning. You are welcome to say their names aloud as you are willing. Those named aloud and those remembered in the silence, and all those who are suffering elsewhere in our world this hour, we hold in our community of compassion. We now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which sustains this community and its mission to the larger world.
my face turned to the sun. Weight on my shoulders and a bullet in my gun. Oh, I got eyes in the back of my head, just in case I have to run. I do what I can when I can, while I can for my people. While the clouds roll back and the stars fill the night, that's when I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on, 'cause I can feel it in my bones. Early in the morning, before the sun begins to rise, we're gonna start moving towards that separating line. I'm wading through the muddy waters. You know I got my made up mind, and I don't mind if I lose any blood on the way to salvation. And I'll fight with the strength that I got until I die. So I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on. And I know what's around that bend might be hard to face, 'cause I'm alone, and I might just fail, but Lord knows I've tried. Sure as the stars fill up the sky, stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on. I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across that river. Do you hear people calling, calling me to answer? I'm gonna keep on keeping on. Well, I can feel it in my bones. I'll go prepare a place for you.
Thank you so much for that beautiful song. It was just as good the second time that I heard it this morning. Following up on the song Stand Up, our children's story today is called Walking with the Wind. So I'd like to invite any children down to the front so they can hear and see. This message was adapted by Reverend Karen G. Johnston from a story in the prologue of John Lewis's memoir. John Lewis was a great leader in this nation who died in July 2020. Many people were sad to lose him and thankful for all he has done to bring about justice in our nation. He had lived a long and full life, asking of himself and asking of all of us to show up for justice, to do what we can, and then do just a little bit more to make sure that there was more fairness in our country. John Lewis grew up in a large family, and he would spend time with his aunts and his uncles, his siblings and his cousins. There were many children in the neighborhood who would all play together. In his memoir, Mr. Lewis tells about a time when he was playing outside his Aunt Seneva's house with about 14 other children, when a big storm, a huge storm, arrived. This was the kind of storm that would make every single one of us feel very, very afraid. I'm going to tell the story from his perspective, so it's like he's talking. So when I say I, it really means Mr. John Lewis. Aunt Seneva was the only adult around, and as the sky blackened and the wind grew stronger, she herded us all inside. Her house was not the biggest place around, and it seemed even smaller with so many children squeezed inside. Small and surprisingly quiet. All of the shouting and laughter that had been going on earlier outside had stopped. The wind was howling now, and the house was starting to shake. We were scared. Even Aunt Seneva was scared. And then it got worse. The house started to sway. The wood plank flooring beneath us began to bend, and then we could see that a corner of the room started to lift up. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. None of us could. The storm was actually pulling the house toward the sky, with us inside it. That was when Aunt Seneva told us to clasp hands. "Line up and hold hands," she said, and we did as we were told. Then she had us walk as a group toward the corner of the room that was rising. From the kitchen to the front of the house we walked, the wind screaming outside, sheets of rain beating on the roof. Then we walked back in the other direction as another end of the house began to lift. And so it went, back and forth, 15 children walking with the wind, holding that trembling house down with the weight of our small bodies. More than half a century has passed since that day, and it has struck me more than once over those many years that our society is not unlike the children in that house, rocked again and again by the winds of one storm or another, the walls around us seeming at times as if they might fly apart. It seemed that way in the 1960s, at the height of the civil rights movement, when America itself felt as if it might burst at the seams. So much tension, so many storms. But the people of conscience never left the house. They never ran away. They stayed. They came together and they did the best they could, clasping hands and moving toward the corner of the house that was the weakest. And then another corner would lift, and we would go there. And eventually, the storm would settle and the house would still stand. But we knew that another storm would come and that we would have to do that all over again. And we did. And we still do. All of us, you and I. Children holding hands, walking in the wind. Thank you for listening today to Mr. John Lewis's story. And please join me in singing the children out to Children's Chapel.
As we move now into our time of meditation, I invite you to find a comfortable, receptive posture. Close your eyes if you wish, and take several deep breaths as I lead you into the silence with this little poem prayer of mine. The young woman, the teenager, the single mom struggling are missing from our circle. Where have they disappeared to? May the grasses and the trees, the mountains, rivers, and streams accompany and comfort them, wherever they may be under the stars, even if their voices now are only whispered by the wind.
See your face in the firelight. I wonder how the fire started. Some people might call you pretty, but I'll call you broken-hearted. Your name written in blue. I'll follow you like a river if you just guide me through. Let's rent a car and drive it miles away. Let's start a fire and survive it 1,000,000 miles away. Let's steal the sun and hide it 1,000,000 miles away. Let's find a storm and ride it 1,000,000 miles away. When I see you dance in the bar light, I wonder when the song will end. Some people might think you're graceful, but I think you're brittle and bent. And I've got a map in my pocket. Every town is me through. Let's rent a car and drive it 1,000,000 miles away. Let's start a fire and survive it 1,000,000 miles away. Let's steal the sun and hide it 1,000,000 miles away. Well, let's find a storm and ride it 1,000,000 miles away. When I see you read by the candlelight, I wonder if you'll hurt your eyes. Some people like happy endings, but I've always liked a surprise. And I've got a map here in my pocket that shows where Lucifer fell. Yeah, I'll fall from heaven if you guide me through hell. Let's rent a car and drive it 1,000,000 miles away. Let's start a fire and survive it 1,000,000 miles away. Let's steal the sun and hide it 1,000,000 miles away. Well, let's find a storm and ride it 1,000,000 miles away. 1,000,000 miles away. 1,000,000 miles away.
Thank you so much. You guys are just wonderful. Dr. Hill is a Spokane Tribal member and grew up on the Spokane Indian Reservation. Dr. Hill served as a Spokane Tribal attorney for over a decade and as a Coeur d'Alene Tribal Court Judge. Ms. Hill earned her Juris doctorate from Gonzaga School of Law and her Master's of Urban and Regional Planning from Eastern Washington University. Dr. Hill is a professor of urban planning and American Indian law at Eastern. She is the director of the American Indian Studies program. Dr. Hill was awarded the Trustees Medal, which is the university's highest form of recognition for faculty achievement. And this year, she was selected as a Spokesman Review Woman of the Year. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Hill.
Heo putis in kasihu, putis in kweli, putis luchalacht, Louis Quest, Sipani, Lusin Yapenson Quest, Margo Hill-Ferguson. Good morning, everyone. I welcome you to the homelands of the Spokane Tribe. And in my language, I just welcome our relatives and friends and explain that my tribal name was Tsipani, which is a sing-song of the Tiskakane. It's a bird, a hand game that we played with our grandmothers. Before I begin, I would like to share my cousins drove in from the reservation, my Corral family cousins, they are going to, Melody's going to sing a song, and her mother, Ampero, has joined us. So I wanted to invite them to share a song before I begin.
My name is Pisakio Piosco, which means sunrise sitting woman. This is my daughter, Oki Sagosquel, which means woman lives in the sky. And just really quick, the song that we're going to share is just, it's a very old song. So somewhere out towards the Palouse Highway, there is a monument that is called the Hangman Creek. And the song that we're going to sing is the Hangman Creek song. And just a brief history about it is there were Spokane men, Nimipu men, Coeur d'Alene men, and Palouse men who were being executed by the U.S. military. And before they were hung, they asked, is there anything that you guys want to say, like any final words? And the Spokane man said, no, but I do have a song to share. So that is the song that we're going to be singing. And we're really sick.
So as we share our beautiful songs and we begin to understand a little bit of the issues, I just want to say that I am so thankful for UU Church. And when Paul asked me to come and visit with you, I was pleased to do so because it was the Universal Unitarian Church that stood with us when Jacob Johns and our brothers and sisters gathered to get the name changed to Huistok's Way. And it was UU that it really invited us and welcomed us when we had nowhere else to hold ceremony for Guy Fawkes. We were able to use your facility, so we're so thankful for this space and for our brothers and sisters here at UU. As was mentioned in the meditation, many, and you can go to this is the slide. Many of our women and our people go missing. You don't see us, but this is my great-grandfather, Basil Pion, my great-grandmother, Sadie Boyd, my grandmother and my mother. At different times lived here. This is our traditional homelands of the Spokane Tribe. Since our beginning contact with European settlers, we've had issues and conflicts. My great-grandmother told a story about the building of the dam at Little Falls, and we know this from Grand Coulee Dam about the settlers who were gambling and drinking, and as they were building the dam, they were roughing up our men. She said this in the language, and just about a month ago, I had a little help transcribing some of the words that I couldn't understand. But she said a word in Salish that was a euphemism for rape, and it talked about the women that were dragged off by the men, essentially a man camp when they were building the dams along the Spokane River. So this has continued to happen, and as you heard in the meditation about the young gal stops pretty places, this continues to happen. Next slide, please. So we live here in the city of Spokane. My husband, Jeff Ferguson, we have 4 children. I have 3 biologically, and these are my 2 oldest. And you don't always see us, but my son, he lives here in Spokane, and he drives out to the reservation every day, and he teaches the Salish language. He learns and he's teaching it. We say it's like an airplane. We're building it and flying at the same time because we have no more language speakers, or very few, and we lose them every year. And then my oldest daughter, she works in the Spokane Valley at the Healing Lodge of 7 Nations. We have an alcohol and drug treatment center for youth, and it's sad that we would need such a facility, but we are all doing the work to help our people survive 150 years and many more years than that, 500 years of historical trauma and colonization for our people. Next slide, please. I want to talk to you a little bit about murdered missing Indigenous women. And I refer to one of my aunties, Patsy Whitefoot. She's the one in the middle with the orange shirt. Her sister Daisy May went missing 30 some odd years ago, and she has been a staunch advocate on this issue. She's testified before the Oregon State Legislature as well as the Washington State Legislature about murdered missing Indigenous women. And as she learned the law and the policies, she said, after learning the policies and hearing the stories, Native women were like bounties. I learned that we were hunted. And so that kind of gets to the bottom line issue that I'm going to talk about. Next slide, please, about human trafficking. And, through the pandemic, there were so many systems that shut down. But I can tell you that trafficking is profoundly adaptable. They work through social media. I have a friend here in the city of Spokane from the Calvo tribe, and her daughter went missing, and pretty soon she got a knock at the door, and it was the FBI. And sure enough, her daughter had been trafficked and continues. There are traffickers and trap houses right here in the city of Spokane. I could tell you their names, and men that drug young people, young women, and beat them and use them for prostitution. When her daughter was missing, she went into her computer and found multiple Facebook accounts and men that were talking and soliciting this young girl. Next slide, please. There are many types of trafficking. There's sex trafficking, there's labor trafficking, and it's right here, happening right here in the city of Spokane. There are many risk factors. Sometimes it's substance use concern, runaway, homeless. Our young people have unstable housing. The young people are facing a housing crisis here in Spokane. My kids often have to work 2 jobs, whether it's at the Healing Lodge or Fleet Feet or downtown at River Park Square. My daughter's apartment that she's just going to be moving into is $1,400 a month. That's often more than many of our mortgage. And you just know why it's so hard for young people, even when they're trying with 2 jobs to make rent. This is a case that happened right here in Spokane. Amanda Pacotis was dragged and forcibly removed from the Spokane Tribal Casino by this man, Joseph Parisian. We know that we have to deal with this not only on the streets of Spokane, but our own tribal facilities. And we are working to fight this issue. There was a tribal leader that went to the chairman's house when he heard about this case and said, and our chairman didn't know anything about it. So he didn't stop there. He went next door to the chairman's son's house, who's on the gaming commission, and they pulled up the video and they got it to the police. So this man was arrested. When they tracked Amanda down, she denied it. Often victims recant. They won't testify against their perpetrators because they've been so victimized, beaten and abused and threatened. A tribe out of California recently contacted me and asked me to write the story of a young African-American gal. She had gone off to college, and her dad was actually a minister and her mom was an attorney. Yet there was a man that showed up at the campus well-dressed, and he said, "You're so beautiful. These traffickers manipulate and they know what to tell victims. Would you want to be in our video?" And he invited her to be in a video. And so she went there, and there were makeup artists, and there was videographers, and an actual Grammy Award-winning artist. And he had her sign the paperwork, and she was in this video. And then the next time he called her, it was another event. But there was some red flags. And so when he called her again, she said, "No, I've got to focus on my studies." And he said, "What?" He said, "I own you." And he flipped through the paper and he said, "You live at 1117 Northway Street. You and your roommate, I know where you live. I've been to your campus." And he flipped some more papers. "And your home address? I have your parents' address." And so he threatened and coerced her and pushed her into prostitution before she knew it. And she was so afraid and ashamed that she was too scared to tell her parents. She finally got out. But that's happening right here in Spokane, and we can tell you the names. I got phone calls on this case. There was a man elder from Alene tribe that said, "Oh, they're holding this Indian guy and they don't even have any evidence." Well, people who knew, there was a Calvo tribal female attorney who said, "This guy is known for prostitution and selling drugs." And so we're waiting to hear the actual charges that will be filed. Next slide, please. But it's happening right here in our city. There are lots of numbers, and we heard the numbers in our opening reading, but when you have thousands of Indigenous people missing and murdered, and then the U.S. Department of Justice NCIC case only logs 116 cases, there's something wrong. The Center for Disease Control lists murder as the 3rd leading cause for Indigenous women. And on some Indian reservations, Native women are killed at 10 times the rate, and some suffer domestic violence than the average American woman. Next slide, please. But we're doing the work. We are doing the work here in the Spokane and Washington State. I served as the U.S. as the tribal attorney for the Spokane Tribe for a decade, and for years I got letters of declination. It's the responsibility for the U.S. Attorney's Office under federal Indian law to prosecute cases in Indian country, out on the reservation. They limit our jurisdiction against non-Indian bad actors. So we're dependent upon the FBI to investigate the crimes, like major crimes, murder, rape, arson. And the U.S. Attorney is supposed to prosecute. But for decades, we had violent crimes on our reservation, and they declined prosecution. Oh no, that molester will not be a good perpetrator in court. He has an oxygen tank. We don't care. We want them prosecuted. There were violent crimes. There was a drug dealer who took a razor blade out of her hair and sliced somebody from ear to ear. 72 stitches to reconstruct, declined prosecution. But I can tell you, we are doing the work. Next slide, please. We are working to prosecute these bad actors. This is a case up on the Colville Indian Reservation where more than 100 pounds of illegal drugs was confiscated, firearms. This was part of a multi-task force between BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs, law enforcement, DEA, drug enforcement, and tribal, state, and federal efforts. This is what happens when we work across jurisdictions. 161,000 deadly fentanyl-laced pills were taken, in addition to 80 pounds of methamphetamine and firearms. When we do the work, we can put these bad actors in jail. Next slide, please. But unfortunately, it doesn't always happen. This is my great niece, Nika Stenskar. She had been on the west side in a drug and alcohol treatment facility, getting clean and sober. She had a job and her family would go and visit her, but she had 2 children, so she wanted to come home to the reservation. She got a new job and was going to start at the Nispelem Trading Post. Unfortunately, she went out one more night with her friends, and Nika Jo passed away of an overdose, leaving behind 2 small children. I do all that I can to support these young children, and they're being raised today by their grandparents. So these bad actors need to be accountable. Next slide, please. We're doing the work here in Washington State. My husband, Jeff Ferguson, and I talked to our chairwoman. The funding had been cut for the tribal liaison in Eastern Washington for the Washington State Patrol. My husband drafted a letter that we sent to our tribal council, and it got sent out. They said, why not share this to other tribes? It went out to other tribes. That week here in Spokane, we were having the Affiliated Tribes of Northwest Indians Conference, 57 tribes in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Western Montana. And our tribal leaders passed a resolution that went to the Washington State Patrol and went to the governor's office. By Monday, the head of Washington State Patrol was walking in and say, who did we vet for that position in Eastern Washington? So this map is a map that I originally had my students map. As an urban planner, we map and use GIS to visually tell the story. You can see, of course, in King County, there's a high number, high population density, but also we have a large number in Yakima. Why is that? Why do we have so many murdered missing Indigenous women and people in Yakima County? I can tell you there's lots of reasons, and I just have a short time with you, but there's drug traffickers that go north to south, and they go from whether it's California through Oregon up through the Tri-Cities and into Canada and back and forth. There's gang and drug cartels, and they use some of our Indian territories because they know there's issues with law enforcement, that there's a void, that we have trouble getting people to prosecuted in our tribal communities because of these jurisdictional issues. Next slide, please. But we continue to do the work here in Washington. This is a list from Washington State Patrol. If you go to their website and you look at murdered missing Indigenous people, there are 3 pages of names. The first column is the names of the person that goes missing, their age, the date they went missing. Then it is the jurisdiction and the phone number to call. we have an alert system so that when our people go missing, that there's somebody looking for them. We deal with so many stereotypes. When you have it in the media, we're blamed. They call us drug addicts or sex workers. And law enforcement doesn't always look for us. You know, when a person that's not of color goes missing, like Gabby Petito, we hear the name and it's all over our news. But when Indigenous people go missing or people of color, we are often not looked for. Next slide, please. Here in Spokane, Washington, we have a high urban Indian population. I'm the chair of the board of directors for the American Indian Community Center, and I had my students map this information. I asked our director, which tribes do we come in contact with in Spokane? And so all the green are the Indian reservations in northwestern America, all those green. And Spokane is the highest urban center between Minneapolis and Seattle. Lots of Indigenous people were relocated here in the 70s before they were getting ready for termination. And so you can see it, that, and as mobility, we move back and forth between our tribal communities and our urban cities where there's jobs and education. Next slide, please. And so there are a lot of issues. The United States Supreme Court in Oliphant in 1978 said that we have no jurisdiction over non-Indians. Often there's poor relationships with law enforcement. There's still prejudice, and as I said, we're dependent upon our law enforcement, whether it's FBI or the U.S. Attorney's Office to prosecute. Next slide, please. And I didn't set my timer, so you have to let me know about how time. Okay. Critical issues. I'm a professor in urban planning, and I ask people, what if I'm in Philadelphia or different places around the country, what does this look like to you? This is a map of the Confederated Tribes of Umatilla Indians. And to many urban planners, they say, oh, that looks like a zoning map. What this is a jurisdictional map with every different color. If you look at the blue, that's tribal trust land. If you look at the orange, that's tribal fee land. And the cream color, the white color, that's non-Indian owned land. So our reservations are literally a checkerboard. And that causes confusion for law enforcement. Who can come in and arrest these bad actors? Who can prosecute these cases? Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, things are different today. We are doing the work. Here in Eastern District, we had U.S. Attorney Vanessa Waldruff, who was doing the work. She helped us to prosecute some of these cases. There are lots of cases that I could tell you about, assaults that happened that weren't prosecuted, but today they are calling us. They are seeing what we want to have happen. Next slide, please. Vanessa Waldruff, who's no longer now at the U.S. Attorney's Office because of the new administration, did the work to have Bree Blackhorse sworn in. She had 5 new U.S. attorneys to prosecute these crimes. Next slide, please. When there's a crime on the reservation, it matters what's the race of the perpetrator, what's the status of the land, and what's the crime. All of those have jurisdictional implications on who can prosecute the crime, and bad actors know that. Next slide, please. So they come to the reservation as a refuge to sell their drugs or traffic people. Tribal people were relocated across the country, and this map indicates how we were sent from our homelands into urban areas. Next slide, please. There's a book I'll refer you to called Highway of Tears by Jessica McDermott. It's also an Audible, but it tells the story of First Nations and the perpetrators, who was a young white male in his 20s. Also, there was a serial killer killing Indigenous women, and also there was a judge that was preying on young Indigenous women in Canada. So I point you to a Highway of Tears. Next slide. It really takes all of us. This is a case where a young female was abducted from a tribal park in Montana. She was trafficked clear down to Mexico. Her and her friend said, when we get out of here, you just run like heck. Just run like heck and don't look back. They dug out and they ran like heck, those two gals. And this young gal ended up on the Canadian, or on the border in San Diego, and they believed her. So she was able to call home and get home to her parents. Next slide, please. This is happening here in the city of Spokane. I don't have the opportunity to tell you all the stories, but down at the Globe, young women were getting drugged. Thankfully, my niece got to the bathroom and the girls got her into an Uber and she got home. Young people have to be careful. We can't wear both earbuds when we're out running. We have to travel together. Next slide, please. Even us as adults need to pay attention to where we park in lit places. These are the risk factors, the indicators for Indigenous people when we go missing, whether it's homelessness or lack of job opportunities. There's a lot of risk factors that make us vulnerable. The jurisdictional issues, the lack of jobs. I'm going to wrap up here. Addiction, emotional abuse, loss of land and culture. Next slide. It takes all of us. The solutions, it's a collaborative work across our communities with law enforcement. We need good foster homes. I encourage you to consider being a foster parent. My husband and I have fostered half a dozen children. It's hard. I've been cussed out. I've had to call the cops. But our young people in foster homes are more vulnerable because they question what's wrong with me. And they are vulnerable to being on the street and the traffickers. Next slide, please. We're doing a lot of work here in Washington State. We have the tribal liaisons. We have an Amber Alert system. We have bills at the state legislature. Formerly the U.S. Attorney, Bob Ferguson, now the governor, is doing the work to have a cold case unit. Next slide, please. We also have Indigenous legislators, Claudia Kaufman, and these folks are working for us in Olympia, Chris Stearns, Deborah Leekenoff. So we have a voice in the Washington State Legislature. And I think I have one more slide. But the task force is working with families. They're working with tribes, with law enforcement, data and research, trying to find solutions. But it takes all of us. When we see something, say something. Next slide, please. We've had art installations. My husband, Jeff, was asked to curate an art show at Guac to bring attention. Sometimes we have to take to the streets. I have a number of publications that was shared with you in your bulletin. I encourage you to read the magazine article from TRB and also the economic article that it's a more academic, but there's the specific story of one of our sisters that went missing. So I encourage you to click on the links that were provided for you in your program. Last slide. It's a call to action to support homes, whether it's the YWCA Women Domestic Violence Shelters. We have Vanessa Bian Crisis Center, our youth programs, our domestic violence women. There's Yoyot Spokane here in Spokane. My husband and I have Elk Soup, a nonprofit group that provides programs and empowerment to Indigenous family. Again, I thank you so much for inviting me to share with you. I encourage you to read a little more. And if you see something, say something. You can report it to law enforcement because our communities are more safe when we all stand together. Lum lumps, Petsiat. Thank you.
Okay, so you can turn to number 1 in your singing the living tradition. We don't have the PowerPoint for these songs. So if you want to sing with us, turn to your living tradition hymnal. It's going to be number 1. May nothing evil cross this door.
Our benediction is this Hopi prayer. Hold on to what is good, even if it's a handful of earth. Hold on to what you believe, even if it's a tree that stands by itself. Hold on to what you must do, even if it's a long way from here. Hold on to your life, even if it's easier to let go. Hold on to my hand, even when I've gone away from you. Amen, blessed be, salam alaikum, and shalom.